Well, I hope everybody by now realizes that nonviolent communication is not about communication. I mean, a little bit of it, a tiny little piece of it. Nonviolent communication is an integration of several things, of which communication is just a little part. And nonviolent communication is certainly not the 4 steps. The more we think of it as mechanically observation, feelings, needs, requests, the harder it's going to be to live nonviolent communication. So what is it? That's the hardest question for me to answer about the process, what it is. Because it's much easier to say what it isn't. It isn't communication, just communication. Communication is a part. For me, the most important part of it is the consciousness of what it's trying to serve, its purpose, what it is designed to do, whatever it is. So for me, the most important part of it is an intention. Some people in English, instead of intention, would probably use the word the spirituality that it's designed to serve. I'm reluctant to use the word spirituality since some people have that associated with some pretty violent concepts. So whether we want to call it intention, purpose, spirituality, that for me is the most important component of what I mean by nonviolent communication. And unless that consciousness is really what is guiding us, whatever comes out would not be what I would probably call nonviolent communication. So what is that purpose or intention? To create a certain quality of connection with ourself and with other people. To create a connection that allows compassionate giving and receiving to take place naturally. So it's all about compassionate giving and receiving. How do we connect with ourselves and others so that that takes place naturally? Now, what do I mean by compassionate giving and receiving? First of all, it's easy to say what it isn't. It means not doing anything out of obligation. Don't do anything because you should, because it's the right thing to do, because you feel obligated to do it. Life's too short to do anything out of duty or obligation. What it doesn't involve, as far as I'm concerned, is doing anything for rewards. Just yesterday, I read a recent study quoted by Alfie Kohn, whose book, Punished by Rewards, I like very much. And it showed research showing that students in school who learn for rewards are far less likely to maintain and continue the learning. And so anything we do for rewards is a tragic use of our human energy. And, of course, never do anything to avoid punishment. Don't do anything to avoid criticism. Don't do anything to get praise and compliments. So that's what I would suggest not doing. Any question about that so far? So nonviolent communication is designed to show us a way in which we can connect with ourselves and others so that we operate out of a different energy than that created by rewards, punishment, criticism, praise, duty, obligation. So, what is compassionate giving and receiving? First, it's where you can't tell the giver from the receiver. It's hard to use the word giver when it's compassionate giving, because the giver is receiving, is doing this to meet their own needs. Now, as radical as that sounds, nonviolent communication is designed to have us give always when we're just doing it to meet our own needs. It sounds pretty radical, and if you have certain ears on, it can sound selfish, except I don't think human beings ever do anything for any other reason. I doubt that anybody in this room has ever done something for somebody else. I believe that human beings are like every other form of life. Every action that's taken by something alive is to serve its life. It's only because we've been educated for the last 7,000 or 8,000 years to live within domination structures that we have been educated in a most unnatural way. Instead of, like every other form of life, to get our needs fulfilled, we have been educated to associate our needs with selfishness, neediness. Needs are seen as kind of immature, dependent, weak. Just about everything negative that you can associate something with, needs have been associated with, because the structures we have created to live with under and on our planet require people being educated to be nice, dead people. And what you must program them to believe is that our job is to do that which our superiors define as right, so that we can be rewarded. If we do that while we are alive, then when we're dead, we go to this place called heaven. If we fail at that game of obeying authority, we go to the other place called Detroit. I mean hell. Growing up in Detroit, I get those two places mixed up. So, nonviolent communication is designed to help us to meet our own needs. And one of our strongest needs, according to Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist, the strongest need is a need for meaning, purpose. And however we define that, I believe it boils down to serving life. That our strongest need is to find a way to serve life. So we never do anything for others. If we're really doing it out of a conscious energy, we're doing it to meet our need to enrich life. There's nothing we like better than to enrich life, unless we think we're being forced to do it. Unless we think somebody's going to criticize or blame us if we don't do it, or that they're going to withhold their love. Then any action takes the joy out of it. But when we're conscious that we really never do anything except to meet our own needs, that's a very important start of nonviolent communication, to help us with that, to realize that we never do anything for others, only to meet our own needs. Any questions about that? So, I developed nonviolent communication because I could see that the language that I learned and the way of using power and the thinking that I was educated to do, those three things, thinking, language, and the use of power, and those three go together. They're integrated. Thinking, language, use of power. I saw that the way I was educated to think, the language that I was given to think with, and the use of power, I saw they did not serve that consciousness of living my life to meet my needs and to meet my needs compassionately and to connect with others so that we can give and receive compassionately. I saw the language, the thinking, the use of power did not serve that. For example, my brain was programmed with a very tragic way to give people language. It involved the use of this very dangerous phenomenon called the verb to be. I hope your brain wasn't programmed that way. If you have the verb to be in your head, you will think that some things a person does are right, and some things they do is wrong. You will think there's such a thing as normal people and abnormal people. You will think there's such a thing as attractive people and ugly people. Do any of you have any of those words in your head? You do. Let's get rid of them. Let's get rid of them. So let's do a little imagination. Let's imagine that somebody has done a brain scan, computerized research in your brain. And they see that they have tabulated the word that you have most used in your life to judge another person when they have done something you don't like. Write that down. Write down what is the thing that if you could think that you have been most inclined to judge people when they do something you don't like.
Marshall,
Yeah.
Can you explain that? I didn't really get it.
Yeah, if we had somehow put a program in your brain to see the thinking or verbalization of how you are likely to judge people that do something you don't like. Just what would be, there might be many of them, but what's just one? Pick one out of there of how you judge, what are you likely to judge somebody who does something you don't like.
What you call them? What would you call them? Is that...
Or if you said it out loud, or what would, in your brain, what would you think they are?
Judgments.
Judgments of people, yeah. So let's hear a few of these so we can see how our brains have been programmed. Selfish. Ignorant. Stupid. Wrong. Indifferent. Incompetent. Pardon? Needy.
What means needy?
Needy means you need a lot of attention, perhaps.
Needy is a variation on the word T-O-O. See, that's an important word to brainwash people with. See, that means the T-O-O means some things are just right, but some things are too much and too little. So we have certain words that abbreviate just about all of these other words, like the word T-O-O. It means a person has done too much of something or too little of something. But it means there's a just right way to do it.
Lazy.
Pardon?
Lazy.
Lazy, yes. Pardon?
Dominant.
Dominant. Domineering. Domineering. Okay, dominant.
I
Domineering.
don't use the word, I have a sentence.
A sentence.
Sometimes I say it loud, but I can only say it in German, yeah. If I feel anger and if I feel pain, I say, leck mich am Arsch.
I want to learn this. It seems people like it very much. I don't know. She's gonna teach us.
Can somebody translate?
Kiss my ass.
Kiss my ass. It's a variation on that. What's the literal word?
Lick my ass.
Lick my ass. Lick my ass. Oh, the only thing is in English that would be dangerous because to lick somebody means to beat them. So be careful in translating that into English.
Sometimes I only think it and sometimes I say it.
Yeah. I'll be suggesting throughout our time together that even if we think these words, we pay dearly for it. For every second we are thinking there is such a thing as selfish, ignorant, stupid, wrong, indifferent, incompetent, needy, lazy, domineering, we pay dearly for it. Our body pays for it. Our spirit pays for it. To live in a world where we think there are such things is a world that, for me, is not much fun. Yeah.
I understand what you want to say, but I can't share your analysis. You are blaming the word to be. Cogito ergo sum. I think that's the reason that I am, said a philosopher some times ago. And the meaning of to be is quite different from the adjectives. So I think you blame the adjectives and not the word to be.
So we want to say then it's not the verb to be, it's words. We'll just say words like selfish and so forth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was quoting Alfred Korzybski and other semanticists who use the phrase that the verb to be is what they're trying to replace. But I see they're talking about it when it's followed by these adjectives. Any other words we can add to our language of how we've been programmed? Pardon?
Uncaring.
Uncaring.
Liar.
Liar.
Sensitive.
Sensitive.
What's your problem?
So notice how you give us a question, but my experience is those questions, when they're asked with a certain tone of voice, the person already has the answer to it. It means when they say, why did you do this? You know already the answer is because you're selfish, ignorant, stupid, wrong, indifferent, incompetent, needy, lazy, domineering, uncaring, liar, sensitive. But the question is just an abbreviated way of asking the question. I'm sure some of you have heard me tell about a young man that taught me something, a 9-year-old guy. I was waiting in a school that he was attending for the school to be over. I was going to be working with the teachers. And here this 9-year-old guy comes walking down the hall, and the teacher comes running out of the room, and she says, "Why are you out in the hall?" Now, this young guy, he knows how to handle somebody that asks you that kind of question. See, he knows there's always a judgment behind it. The question is just an indirect way of saying you're bad. So he really taught me how to handle somebody asking that kind of question. Here was his response. Silence. He knows never answer such a question without a lawyer. So this teacher, though, was rather persistent on getting an answer to her question. She said, "Why are you out in the hall?" Silence. So I like how he taught me how to deal with questions where you can sense by the tone of voice that behind it is just the person has already decided you are these things. Okay, so now nonviolent communication tries to keep our focus not on this game of what does authority think is right, which is why we learn this language. You see, this is a language of domination. If you want to persist in a culture that has people called superiors who have the right to control those below them, you need this kind of language because it's part of retributive justice. So how do we translate that word into French and German, retributive?
I didn't get it in English either.
It's all about the word deserve. It's all about the word deserve. It implies that if you do the right thing, the unselfish, the intelligent, the competent, all of these positive parts, if you get judged positively, you deserve reward. But if you do these things, oh my goodness, you deserve to suffer. Now, how much do you deserve? You see, this is one of the problems of superiors, to determine how much you deserve to suffer if you do these things. And then you mete out the suffering in various forms, physical suffering. So how severe a beating you deserve for an action is determined by the superiors called teachers, parents, presidents, whatever. See, they determine how much you deserve to suffer if it's a physical suffering. But if they really want you to suffer, physical is too easy to get over. So we have to know how much spiritual suffering you deserve. And then we use shame. See, if you really want to be violent to people, don't hit them. Use shame. Make them feel ashamed of what they are. And that's the purpose of this language, you see. If you're these things, it's disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. Or another one, guilt. See, if you want to really be violent, you, in your use of power, use power over people. Power over is based on physical suffering that you can create for them if they don't do what you want, or spiritual suffering. Get them to feel guilty or shameful for what they have done. So that's the use of power that most people, the vast majority, in fact, on our planet, have been taught to use. Power over. Nonviolent communication is designed to increase our power with people, not over them. Power with people means we never want to do anything and people to do anything unless they consciously choose to do it. And we want their only reason for choosing to do it is they see how it will meet their needs. And we want to be sure they never do it out of guilt, shame, or fear of some other kind of punishment. Because if we would see how much we pay for every criticism we make, we would never use this language. Ooh. To whatever degree a person has heard any of these words coming from you, oh my goodness, if we could measure how much we pay for it, that would quickly get us to radically change our consciousness and our language. See, to whatever degree a child of mine associates me of calling them lazy if they don't do what I want, to whatever degree people associate us with the use of criticism, punishment, guilt, shame, etc., takes the joy out of compassionately giving. It blocks it. How can you get to compassionate giving when you have to fear this? Or you associate this person of what they're going to do to you if you don't do for them what they want. Takes all the joy out of giving. And boy, we can't afford to give that up, so we certainly never want to use any language that implies wrongness of people. Okay, so to get out of that has helped me to be conscious that every one of these judgments that implies wrongness of some kind or another is a tragic, suicidal expression of an unmet need.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, every word that implies wrongness. So every one of these words, anytime a person says selfish, ignorant, stupid, wrong, indifferent, etc. Freedom fighter, terrorist. Every word that implies wrongness is a tragic, suicidal expression of an unmet need. Imagine a person comes to your country. They don't know any of your language, okay? And you decide to be totally brutal and violent to this person. And you say to this person who knows none of your language, you know, in our culture, we have a special word that you use that when you are the most desperate and need nurturing and care. I'm going to show you this. We say this in our culture, and this will get everybody to respond compassionately to you. Now, right? This person's going to really want to know. Isn't that a wonderful culture that you just say this one word and when you're the most needy? So you say to the person, when you're really hurting, go to another person and say this. Asshole! Wouldn't that be a nasty trick to play on somebody? But it's been played on us. If you have any of those words in your head, that's the same thing. It's like, it means the need of yours isn't getting met. And when you use language like this, two things are the most likely to happen. The person will do it, whatever you want, and you will pay for it. But there's also a high possibility that if you say this, you won't get it because what you see is what you get. For example, if you think there is such a thing as being lazy, and you tell a child of yours, you're lazy, you didn't clean up your room, to think that that's going to get the child to enjoy contributing to whatever need of yours would be met by the bed being made or the things being picked up. Not very likely to get it done for reasons you won't be sorry for later. So when I work in industry, I know they've got things they need to get done. So in industry, I define training this way. Getting production for reasons you don't have to pay for later. And I use the same language with parents and teachers. Getting what you want for reasons you don't have to pay for later. Yes, we certainly would like people to do certain things that would contribute to our well-being. But we want to be sure that we never use any language that implies wrongness. And we want to be sure we don't use any language that implies rightness. Because that's perpetuating the game that's been played on our planet that contributes to the violence. So, all of these words, in the context that they're used, really means that the speaker's needs have not been met. And tragically, this is the only way they've been educated to express their needs. So nonviolent communication is the language of life. It's based on two questions. And it says, if we know how to answer these two questions well, and hear these two questions from other people being answered, we'll enjoy human beings a lot more. They'll enjoy us a lot more. and we'll have peace and harmony in our relationships. If we keep our consciousness focused on these two questions. Question number one, what's alive in us? What's alive?
What's alive?
Yeah, it's the most asked question on our planet because it's the most natural question. It's something that until we've been brainwashed, we obviously want to know. But it's seldom expressed that way. In the culture I grew up in, you didn't say to somebody, what's alive in you? You say, how are you? ¿Cómo allez-vous? ¿Cómo está usted? Wie geht's? In Rwanda, Amakuru, everywhere. It's a natural question. So we're taught to ask the question, but it's a social ritual. We're not taught to really answer it because we haven't been given a language of life. So we all know the answer to it. How are you? Fine, how are you? So that's a social nicety, but it's tragic to make something so important into a social nicety. It's critical. The first thing we need to do is give people, if we're going to use language, a language of life. To say what's alive. What is alive in you? So that's question number one. And question number two. What would make, yeah,
May I say something?
sure.
It's also when we answer it in an almost ignorant way, we also think that the question is not meant.
Oh yeah, we assume it's a social nicety. But what I'm saying is it's a critical question. It's critical to know what's alive in each other. If we're really conscious, we want to know what's alive because we want to contribute to life. We want to make sure that life is being nurtured. That's the good life, when we make sure that everybody's needs are being nurtured. We don't create economic systems where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Like we have now, we measure it. It's successful. Our economics is called successful